Let's use Google Hangout to once again get a national perspective. We're not the only city having a conversation like this. So let's go back to Brooklyn, New York, with Jennifer Bewley with Dice.com. Welcome back to the show. I think, you know, Jennifer, to be honest, we first fell in love with Dice.com because Dice.com first loved us. If anyone saw the link going around last year, you ranked us as, I believe it was the fastest growing, the city with the fastest job growth in the tech sector. Maybe you could kind of catch us up on any new data or explain exactly what that meant.
That's right. So what we were seeing was that employers who were using our site to find technology professionals were doing so more aggressively in 2013 in St. Louis than in any other city. And so that is a quality problem to have. You have a lot of demand. And so more recently, what we saw was that St. Louis has also made another list, which is that it's a tough city to recruit tech talent in. And it's not that the workforce isn't growing, it is. So it's growing through traditional means in terms of more computer science graduates, and then also non-traditional means like what we just saw with LaunchCode, but it's just not enough to keep up with the demand. And so it's a great situation to be in terms of St. Louis for technology talent, and we've continued to see that in 2014, so it really looks like it's going to continue to be a good year.
Tell us more about what you've learned about job seekers. We just heard from the last table that they're not always moving for a better paycheck.
You know, compensation is really table stakes these days. It's everything else that goes around it that's important to them. So for engineers, they really want to be challenged. They want to be working on interesting projects. They want to be working on new emerging technologies. And so for them, it's really about a challenge. But when you see job seekers or candidates or professionals, you're really looking at, you know, how can they take risk? And you see it at two parts of their lives. You see it very early in their career. I call it the chutzpah generation, where you have lots of chutzpah and you're willing to go for it. And then you also see it later in people's career where they have that wisdom that they're willing to share. And so it's a really good time to sort of think about what you want to do. But compensation really is just table stakes today.
Talk more about risk. Are our younger job seekers more or less risk averse?
So younger job seekers or younger candidates will traditionally want to take more risk. And so they're actually almost in some ways harder to recruit and harder to retain. So in terms of keeping talent sort of in St. Louis, the younger generation is really, you know, where you have to sort of start. And so from my perspective, they're much more willing to take risk. Now, if you take a step back and look at the broader economy, what's been really interesting about this recovery is that you've actually seen less risk across the board. And that really started to change in 2013. So when I think about risk, I think about it from the perspective of, is a professional willing to change jobs? Are they voluntarily walking out of a company for either a new company or a new opportunity, or willing to start their own position? And that had been below average for 3 years. And typically you see it much higher earlier in a recovery and much sooner in a recovery. So that really changed in 2013. So it adds a new dynamic to the job market that companies are going to have to be dealing with this year in terms of just retaining the talent that they have.
Maybe along the same lines as being less risk averse, are they more mobile beyond the metro region they are currently in?
So younger professionals do tend to be more mobile. But what's interesting is at Dice, we really try to find efficiency in terms of being able to sort of match employers with technology professionals. So we'll ask them, are you willing to relocate? And we looked at the data from Missouri over the last year, and I think the good news is the home team wants to stay home. So the technology professionals who are working in St. Louis want to stay in region. They may want to change employers, but they want to stay in state. If you flip that around and look for the tech professionals who want to live in Missouri, we see more tech professionals from Illinois who are willing to move to Missouri than the opposite. That's true in Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and other sort of regional states right around Missouri. Mm-hmm. And so what that really tells me is you've really defined yourself as a regional tech hub that people want to be in.
Are we? I believe that we are not, but I will ask you: is this a problem or a challenge that cities everywhere are tackling? Or is this something that just a few select cities in Austin, Minneapolis, or is this an issue for all cities?
Well, it's not an issue for all cities, but it's an issue for a lot of cities. So from the perspective of just talent shortages, you do see it in tech in a lot of different places. So you'll see it in New York, you'll see it in the West Coast cities. One city that's really interesting that you don't really think about that's doing a lot of similar things that St. Louis is doing, and granted it's in a very different place right now, is Detroit. You know, they are really involved from a community perspective in terms of bringing in startups and really attracting technology talent. And we actually see very fast growth in Detroit as well. So there's some competition out there, but you appear, at least from our data, to be in a really good position to be able to attract new talent in.
You talk about Detroit and the kind of the community level. What about the governmental side of things? Is there a role there that you've seen successfully play out?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't sort of diminish government incentives. They're absolutely important. But what's equally important is really for them to be able to take barriers down, make it easy for people to start businesses. And so that's really one of the components that works towards a city being successful in terms of attracting talent. There's a few other ones, you know, having really good universities, having a good stable set of Fortune 500 companies is also important because it just gives a stability to the economy. But the number one thing that the community can do is to be involved from the community perspective. So business leaders, you guys just talked about Arch Grants, very important. So that has a more credible distinction with professionals when they are able to cluster together, see that the community is involved, than even a government grant that may or may not be there next year.
Okay, we heard from our Twitter audience that we're talking too much tech. Is there, are there greater benefits to the larger economy, to other jobs, other professions, other sectors from those tech jobs? Does that grow out from those tech jobs that seem to be so important?
Absolutely. So tech jobs is not just the tech industry, right? So every company is becoming a little bit of a technology company. And so to the extent that you can diversify your economy easily by starting to build around tech professionals, because it's not only the Squares of the world who need talent. It's every other company. It's healthcare companies. It's beverage companies. It's every single company that you could possibly want who needs talent. And so to the extent that they're winning in the marketplace because they're utilizing technology professionals in a really powerful way, means that's going to be good for everybody and it's going to be good for the broader economy.
Jennifer Bewley, Dice.com, thanks so much for your perspective. We appreciate your time once again.